Okay.
Yeah. I go there.
I had a food city salad again. I'm gonna win. I finally got the healing.
Well, that's what Lisa's that you can go to.
I got that. Graduation day.
You'll be visiting.
Let's see, 276. Parallels of heaven.
That's a Saturday. I think so. It's on Saturday.
Is it the 20th or the 13th?
It's always 2 days after. We are Let's do 133 instead of traveling on. We'll do praising the Lord. No, we Wendy's. I just had a problem. Anybody got one?
339
339
at the bottom.
at the bottom. I know that. I shall not be moved.
No.
Another verse battle. Okay. This is me being me. Let's do 342. Where's my kids? Come here and help me. Did a lot of mine. Come here, Jude. Come on, Ashton. Come on, Olivia. Here, stand right here. Stand right here with me. Come here. Come on, Jude. Come here. Okay, you ready? Get your light up. Get your light up. You ready? What? Okay, let's try this again. Put your lights up. Barbie, help me. Yeah, I never sang with three. Ready? Love, draw up. There, slide.
I don't think you ever had Olivia there.
No, Olivia was doing her dance. Did you want to sing? What do you want to sing, Olivia? What Jesus song? Jesus loves me?
No, that was different Jesus song.
Is it? What is it?
I love my Savior.
Ah.
You
You did that? Okay. I don't know if I know that one. Okay, let's go. Come on. Barbie loves to sing loud back there. Oh, there she is. Ready? Let's go to Barbie. Ready? You ready? Ready? I love Jesus better than ice cream, and ice cream is very good. I love Jesus better than ice cream, just the way I know I should. Even when I don't always used to all the things I should. Jesus loves me better than ice cream, and ice cream is very good. Sing it again, one more time. One more time. Say that. Ready? Jesus better than ice cream, and ice cream is very good. I love Jesus better than ice cream, just the way I know I should. Even when I don't always do all the things I should. Jesus loves me better than ice cream, and ice cream is very good. Oh, yeah, so we're going to keep it right. Yeah. Ready? I love Jesus better than pizza, and pizza is very good. I love Jesus better than pizza, just the way I know I should. Even when I don't always do all the things I should. Jesus loves me better than pizza, and pizza is very good. No, you don't say I love the ice cream better than
And we thought Alex was gonna be the troublemaker. I warned her, they get worse.
Good to see everybody out tonight. I'm finally getting to the point where I can take more than 2 breaths without coughing, so we might be able to get through this tonight. We'll see. Last 2 days have been hackathon, I guess, if you want to call it that. But we'll go ahead and we'll come around and pray. Does anybody have a prayer request tonight? Do remember Jenny, they texted me. Jenny's still pretty sick, so do pray for them. They said they weren't going to be able to make it tonight, so Jenny's been pretty rough, I think. Haven't been able to go to work or anything, so do pray for her. Anybody else have a prayer request? All right, how many has unspoken requests? All who can will ask you to gather around the altar and have a word of prayer. Most kind of gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We pray this is all the blessings of life. Lord, we remind us here with no doubt that there's so many things that we would have, Lord, that others don't, Lord. We see the struggles that others are going through, Lord, and help us, Lord, to truly thank you for the service that we have, Lord, and pray that we thank you, God, never so much for who you are, Lord, and what you do for us, Lord. Just help us, Lord, that Lord, you have all over the lives. Lord, we pray God for that. God, you just need each lead, you just touch Jamie, Lord, and to get better, Lord. We pray that you just for Judy, Lord, and Vicky, Lord, all those that are enduring a tough time, Lord, with Kevin, Lord, as they this month as he prepares for surgery. We pray God you just for surgeon's hands, or just take care of support healing this, and Lord, we pray. Lord, if it be your will, Lord, do it tonight as we open up your word and study about Noah and how they entered the ark. Lord, we pray, God, that you just help us, Lord, to understand, Lord, what it is that you did, Lord, and you're going to do again one day, not by flood, but Lord, by fire. Lord, we know that it is coming. So, Lord, we pray that again. Do this each and every one tonight, Lord, as we go through the remainder of the service. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. All righty, Genesis chapter number 7. I put them all on the board back here. We'll see how far we get tonight. Not all at once, but so just to catch up as to where we are, Noah did everything that God asked him to do. In other words, he built the ark. Okay. Last week we talked about the dimensions of the ark and just how big it truly was. I mean, if you do the math, you can see there's plenty of room for all different kinds of animals. And you can see that it is absolutely realistic that God, whether it's realistic or not, if God made it so, it still can happen. You know, I think we too many times as humans try to look and see if it's possible. But the Bible says that with God all things are possible. So it doesn't really matter whether we think it's realistic or not. The Bible says it happens. It's true. And it's the truth of the Word, because it is the Word of God. So as we go into chapter 7, it's about time to board. You know, I can tell you, when we took our cruises, it was an exciting time for us because we knew we were going to have a wonderful time. I bet Noah was getting a little nervous. He might have been watching the sky. You think God gave him a lot of notice? He gave him a little bit of notice, but he didn't give him a lot. And we're going to see that here in just a few minutes. But he didn't get a whole lot of notice as to when this rain was actually going to start. I believe God was simply waiting on Noah to finish. But Noah was probably working hard. You know, I always work harder when I know there's a deadline. But I bet Noah was working pretty hard at this point. Now, it doesn't really say how many how long it took Noah to build the ark. Some people think it took 120 years, just because it says 120 years is how long it's going to be before I bring the waters on the earth. So maybe that's how long it took him. But it doesn't really say at what point he gave Noah these instructions. So it's 120 years, or maybe a little bit less than that. So it says here, and the Lord said unto Noah, Come thou and all thy house into the ark, for thee I have seen righteous before me in this generation. So the first people, the first ones to get on the ark, let me put it that way, was Noah. They were the ones. Why did they get on the ark? Because they were the only ones invited. Okay? The only way we're getting into heaven today is to be invited. If you want to get into the family of God today, you've got to be invited. Well, you know what? That invitation was given to the whole world when Jesus died upon the cross, and He's given that invitation. You know, a preacher can stand up here and say he's given an invitation, but you've already been invited. The preacher doesn't really give an invitation. The preacher will actually the preacher just kind of opens up, gives an invitation during the service, I guess, but the altar itself has been open since Jesus died upon that cross. It doesn't take a preacher stopping preaching and asking you to come down in order for you to be saved. If you're convicted halfway through a service, you shouldn't be waiting until the preacher gets done, because the preacher may not finish before Jesus comes back. You know, one of my favorite videos to watch is the preacher that's up there talking about, Jesus Christ is coming back for His children, and he says He could come next month, He could come next week, or He could even come and boom, the preacher disappears along with most of the church congregation, just like that. And a few people are looking around like, what just happened? You see, they waited too long. Don't wait till the end of the service. You might not make it that far. But the invitation has been given. It's already been given. But Noah and his family were invited. Now only him, and we saw this in the last chapter, his wife, his sons, and his sons' wives. So that's you do the math. That's 8 people. 8 people out of the whole population of the earth were saved. Now I hope there'll be a higher percentage of that this next time. But the Bible does say that few there be that find their way. So we don't know what everybody's life is, and we'll just have to wait and see who's there. But I'll tell you, it's certainly it's going to be few compared to the people of the world. I believe that. So we get to the interesting part, and the part that we've kind of been discussing and hinting about. We watched The Flash last night, and we saw who Savitar was and all this, the bad guy. So I'm not going to give that away. Don't worry, I'm not going to do any of that for those of you who happen to watch it. But we teased about why 7? Why 7 clean beasts when there were only 2 of each kind? In the previous chapter, all we saw was 2 of each kind. Well, here in the second verse, what does it say? It says, Of every clean beast thou shalt take to thee by 7s, the male and his female, and of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Okay, male plus female does not equal 7. So why 7s? Now there's several different schools of thought. And I was of one opinion until I studied this. And then I changed. So, and I don't know who's right. I don't know, maybe that both of us. But I'll tell you why I believe what I now think, anyway. Anybody have any thoughts? Huh?
More women reproduce more.
Oh, that's a possibility.
I thought it was sacrifices.
See, that's where I'm going. But I'll show. Huh? Yeah, I had to eat. See, that's the one I was on. I hadn't thought of the more females to. That's a good point. That's I've always found that one of the things that we have in in at work is, when you have a deadline, what they'll typically do is just throw more people at it. If you're trying to, you're working on a project, what do? You get more people working on it, and that works. Like if you're all mowing the yard, you can all mow a section of the yard, but it gets to a point, it doesn't really help you that much. You get to a certain amount of people that's pretty well optimal. Well, it's that way on our projects, and the analogy that people always come up with is that you can't get 9 women together and have a baby in 1 month. I mean, and that's absolutely true. But that's a good point. That could very well be part of it. The whole point was to populate. Now it was important to me. I'm like David because, and I'll tell you why. Because it says in verse number 20 of the next chapter. We'll jump ahead just a little bit. It says, "And Noah builded an altar and took of every clean beast and of every clean fowl and offered burnt offerings on the altar." That's at least why there was an odd number. Now, as far as why there were 7, maybe he wanted them to multiply faster, and so they could still have sacrifices available or food available. But they really doesn't say what the difference between clean and unclean are, and it does on later on. When Moses defines it, but it doesn't. Moses defined clean and unclean, but that was, thousands of years after, or at least 1,000 years after that it was defined. But it really before.
Moses had to redefine it for the people because they fell away and they didn't know the Bible, which meant they don't remember everything from generations and generations and generations.
Yeah, and
Noah probably knew and understood what clean and unclean meant.
Right.
So it took that many years for them to forget the generations of the Israelites.
We can forget after a day and a half. I don't know. It's just half a day. But yeah, I mean, yeah, it could be. But maybe Noah knew. Maybe that was a verbal tradition that was never written down or passed down or whatever. But essentially, what most people think it means is basically animals that were appropriate to eat and animals that were appropriate to sacrifice. And sometimes that's 2 different schools of thought. Some people think it's both. Some people think it's one and the same. But again, the clean beasts, like Michelle said, maybe they just wanted more females to be able to have more babies and populate quicker. And you're wanting the sacrificial population or the population you can use for sacrifices to be greater. So that's why I switched. Now I'm also the food eating it, but the reason I wonder about that one now is because of and I started wondering last week because we talked about it says, "Make thee an ark of gopher wood, a window shalt thou make it, behold, hang on, where is it? And taken to thee of all food that is eaten, and thou shalt gather it to thee, and it shall be for food for thee and for them." So to me, that was more the fruits and vegetables, or maybe it was meat that they stored already, but they took the food with them, it says. That was in the next to the last verse of the last chapter. I turned back and I didn't even have to. It was right there. But since God said, if God can make a lion be a vegetarian for a little while, he can turn a man into a vegetarian for a little while. Even me, yeah. But I don't know. There's all kinds of different possibilities, and all of them are just as valid as the others. But we do know that they were used for sacrifices. We know that. It doesn't. Well, we may see, but I don't think it actually says. But the clean animals were definitely more important to populate faster. Because even if they took 3 males and 3 female, you're going to populate faster because you'll have 3 females that are able to produce young. Fowls also of the air by 7s, the male and the female, to keep seed alive on the face of all the earth. Again, the sacrifices were made, but also to repopulate faster. So, how much notice did Noah have? For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. And every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of this earth. Same warning that Noah was given him, and now your ark's done. Get in there. 7 days it's going to start raining. Now I find it hilarious when I watch the weather forecast and they think they know what's going to do in 7 days. After about 36 hours, they're guessing. Before that, it's an educated guess. But it's still a guess. They really don't know. I once played a golf tournament on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoons in the middle of the summer when there was a 60% chance of rain every day, and I never got wet. Then they called off the chance of rain, and it rained the next day, I think. So it was, it was one of those things that I think they think they know what's going to happen. The difference is God's already been there. He knew when it was going to start. And I believe Noah believed him. But Noah had to round up all these animals in 7 days? I don't believe so. I believe it says Noah probably opened the door and let them in. But I believe the animals came 2 by 2 or 3 by 3 plus 1. However they came, but or 2 by 2 or 7 by 7 or whatever. It's I don't believe Noah had to do any work to get the animals. He had already shown his faithfulness by building the ark and providing a way, and it was just up to him to get on. And it says, and Noah did according to all that the Lord had commanded him. Again, the most important thing Noah ever did was obey. It's as simple as that. If you want to impress God more than anything, don't try to do something wonderful that you think would be the greatest thing for God's purpose. Listen to what he says and just simply obey him. And you'll impress him more than anything because it's not something that everybody does. I think it's a rare thing for people to obey him. So it says, and Noah was 600 years old when the flood of the waters was upon the earth. And people gripe and complain about mowing the yard when they're 70. I tell you, I could get a lot of people on that one. So, and 44, by the way. I got it right that time, didn't I? I haven't gained another year in the last couple weeks, have I? I gripe and complain about it too. But Noah built an ark. So that means he was still working on building the ark when he was 600 years old. And Noah, unless his birthday fell in that 7 days. But he might have only been 599. That's possible, I suppose. But it says, and Noah went in, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him, into the ark, because of the waters of the flood. So just as God had commanded, they went into the ark. It says, of clean beasts and of beasts that are not clean, and of fowls and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, there went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. You notice it went in unto Noah. That means Noah went in first. Okay? That means he wasn't out there steering and rounding them up. That means they were walking in of their own accord. God was guiding the animals in there. It says in the 6th, and it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. So as God had said, just as he had predicted, 7 days it started raining. It says in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the 2nd month, in the 17th day of the month, The same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up, and the windows of heaven were opened. Now I want you to notice this verse, because this is very important when it comes to all these people that say this flood could not have happened because you can't rain that much. The water did not come just from above. Okay? The waters of the great deep was opened up. I believe there was water underneath the ground. Remember, it had not rained on the earth at this point. It had never the rain had not fallen. How was the ground watered? By the dew, by the moisture that was in the ground. There was a layer of moisture, I think, a thicker layer of moisture above, and then a bunch of waters underneath. So there was more water in the atmosphere then than there was now. And more water underneath the earth, ready to come up. And I believe it was just God said, I'm preparing this just in case, probably. Maybe that's why he had this all prepared. But think about it. Noah lived 600 years. Why do we not live that long? We're exposed to all kinds of things in our life, aren't we? Sunlight. Think about it. If we had this protective layer over the earth a little more, maybe it didn't affect us as much. I don't know. I mean, that's something that people have postulated and thought about. I don't even know what postulated means, but it sounds good. But it's something people have thought about. And people have decided that that maybe that's why people lived so long back then. Because you notice right after Noah, Abraham only lived to 120. Noah lived a while because he had a job to do. He had to repopulate. But right after Noah, a lot of people think that when Noah gets drunk later, I'm going to go ahead and spoil that one, that it wasn't, that maybe the fermentation process wasn't normal. Was different after the flood because all the moisture had gone and there was more impurities in the air to actually ferment the grapes. Maybe it never happened before. Maybe it was grape juice that he thought was still good, and for some reason it wasn't. But it says the rain was upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. So for 40 days, it rained for 3 days, and everybody was whining and complaining, ready to build an ark. Imagine if it rained for 40 days. I mean, that 3 days, it wasn't even a hard rain, and what happened? It flooded enough that a crane fell into the river over here in Weber City. It flooded enough that it covered over how many roadways? And that was just 3 days of not even super heavy rain. And yet, here was the waters of the deep and the waters coming from above flooding the entire earth for 40 days. It says, in the selfsame day entered Noah and Shem and Ham and Japheth, the sons of Noah, and Noah's wife, and the 3 wives of his sons with them into the ark. So they entered in that day. Noah was given 7 days warning, but he said, "You go in the day." He actually went in the day that it was starting to rain. And it says, they and every beast after his kind, and all the cattle after their kind, and every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth after his kind, and every fowl of his kind, and every bird after every sort. Now, the fish didn't have to go. The fish were still there. I mean, it's waters. I mean, some of them died, no doubt, just because of the force of the water, but they didn't have to go. But the birds, you might say, well, they could have just flown over it. No, they couldn't have. The water was coming so hard from above, they wouldn't have survived either. They had to be in there as well. But it says, and they went in unto Noah into the ark, 2 and 2 of all flesh, wherein is the breath of life. And they that went in, male and female of all flesh, as God had commanded him, and the Lord shut him in. Noah didn't shut the door. Noah didn't lock the door, but God shut him in. One of these days, God's going to shut another door, and it's going to be too late for the people of this earth. The judgment's going to come. Now, no doubt, people wondered about Noah. No doubt, it doesn't say that they made fun of him, but you can imagine what people were doing, and you can imagine what people would have been like You want to find out what people would have been like, go build you a boat out in the middle of your backyard and watch people make fun of you. Just tell them you heard there's a flood coming. People will make fun of you. I might join them. No, I'm just kidding. But they will. No doubt the people there were as evil as they are, or more evil than they are today, because it says as it was in the days of Noah, it's how it's going to be in the days of the coming of the Son of Man. So it's going to get worse, and it was worse back then, if you can imagine that. But God shut the door. Even if Noah had wanted to open that door and let them in, I'll guarantee you there'll be those that we would wish had given their heart and life to Jesus and joined us in heaven. And I don't know if we'll not remember them or what, because God's going to wipe away all tears from our eyes, or maybe we'll just have that heart of understanding to know that they had the same chance that we had. And I don't know how that's going to work. I want to see everybody make it, from the one that murders, even the ones that murder their little children. I'd still like to see them get saved and make it, or the ones that have set these bombs that are going off all over the world. I mean, I want to see them get saved. I don't want to see them die and go to hell, because they don't deserve it any more than I do. But God is one of these days going to shut the door, and they're not going to be able to be saved. And the flood was 40 days upon the earth, and the waters increased and bare up the ark, and it was lift up above the earth. Now imagine the force of the waters that had to be when the waters are coming from above and below. Eventually, it got underneath the boat. Now, a lot of times they'll build ships in warehouses, but they'll build it close to the ocean. And then what they'll do is they'll have rollers to take it out to the water. See, Noah didn't have to build any of that. He built it on dry land. He didn't have to worry about building the boat on the water. Built it on dry land, the water came to him. Didn't matter where he built it, it was going to be covered. And the waters prevailed and were increased greatly upon the earth, and the ark went upon the face of the waters. And the waters prevailed exceedingly upon the earth, and all the high hills that were under the whole heaven were covered. Every inch of the earth was covered. There's evidence of this everywhere. Scientists don't want to see it in a lot of cases. They'll talk about how the ocean used to be here. They'll talk about how the continents were all together and it's just finally spread out and all this. But it's sure, maybe the continents were all together. But I'm telling you right now, if there's a flood of waters coming up from underneath, it's going to push things apart, isn't it? So who knows how that? I mean, why not? Why not? I mean, everything covered is what it says. How high was the water? 15 cubits upward did the waters prevail, and the mountains were covered. So let's do 15 cubits. 15 cubits is, just do the math, about 23 feet. Right? 15 cubits, 23 feet. So 23 feet deep. Now 23 feet from what? Now if we could have 23 feet of water here and barely get up to the church roof. If the creek got up to 23 feet deep. So how high was it? It was 23 feet above the highest mountaintop. That's a lot of water. 23 feet. Make sure everything's covered. I'm right on my math, ain't I? 1.5 times, it's 15 plus 22.5, but still, you round up. Huh? I'm sorry, no, it would be round down, 22. You always round to an even number. Look it up. You know I'm right. Look it up. Typically that's true, but when and yeah. Anyway, I don't know why. I think they do that just so you can it'll all average out or whatever. Because if you round down half the time, round up half the time, you always round to an even number. Is what I was told. But what was the purpose of this flood? What occurred in 21? And all flesh died that moved upon the earth, both of fowl and of cattle and of beasts and of every creeping thing that creepeth upon the earth, and every man, all in whose nostrils was the breath of life, of all that was in the dry land died. Notice it didn't say the fish. The fish got to live, okay? And every living substance was destroyed which was upon the face of the ground, both man and cattle, and the creeping things, and the fowls of the heaven, and they were destroyed from the earth. And Noah only remained alive, and they that were with him in the ark. The only ones saved are the only ones in the ark. The only ones saved today are the ones that are in fellowship with Jesus. That's it. And when the judgment comes, the judgment's coming, but everything else died. Now, in this case, it was a physical death. In the case to come, it's going to be a spiritual death. You'll die for eternity, essentially. And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days. So you do the math, about 5 months. 5 months that the flood was among the earth. I mean, how long did it take the flood waters to recede here? A couple of days. I mean, the rivers kept coming up, but a couple of days, and you could start seeing what was the rivers get back in their banks, but for 5 months, the floodwaters were on the earth. Meaning, now what this means is that for 5 months, you could look out. Now this was the one thing that Mom didn't want to go on the cruise for, because if you look every direction, all you see is water. I remember the first cruise I ever went on, I was so excited to see that. I was like, I'm going to wake up tomorrow, and all you're going to see is water. Because we kind of went along the coast of Florida. You can kind of see the coast of Florida to start with. We were in Miami. Then it got dark, so you're like, well, you can't see nothing. When I wake up tomorrow, all I want to see is water. Got up the next day, looked out the window to see, all I can see was water. There was land right there. I was like, what in the world? So I turned on the TV, and they have a channel where you can actually see where you are. It was the coast of Cuba. I was like, well, we're not out in the middle of the ocean. Of course, I'd probably swim the other way if we were trying to go. If we got off, we had any problems there. But there were times though that you could get out, and especially when you have your day at sea, you can look every single direction, and all you can see is water. Well, imagine Noah for 5 months. I mean, ours was a 4-day cruise, 5-day cruise. I don't think we've ever been on one that's longer than 5 days. But, not only did Noah have to do this, but he had to take care of all those animals. So I guess he stayed busy. But for 5 months, no home, no land to just walk on. All he could do was tend to the animals in that ark. But he knew he was saved. It doesn't matter how much work we have to do. If we know there's something worth it on the other side, then we accept it. At least we should. And that's the way we ought to be in our walk with God. It doesn't matter how much we have to do here, how much we feel like God asks us to do. All it should matter is what's the reward that's waiting on us on the other side. And then you realize it's all worth it. We were talking on today at work how all these things are considered so important. But in the grand scheme of things, none of it really matters. I mean, I want to keep Eastman running so that they can continue to pay my salary and things like that. But, in the end, what's it going to matter when you stand before God? What really matters is what we accomplish here and what we accomplish for God out in the world. That's the only thing that really matters. Now, yeah, you have to support your family, you have to eat, all that. I understand that, but let's not lose sight of what's really important, and that's to serve God. Let us hear the conclusion of the whole matter: fear God and keep His commandments. That's the conclusion. That's what Solomon said. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Solomon built this great wealth, and he says, who knows if the one that follows me will be an idiot? That's essentially what he said. Guess what? The one that followed him was an idiot. Lost everything Solomon had. So, well, that's all I got. Anybody have anything?
You suppose they eat and teach? There's a Bible book, suppose.
That's a possibility. They could have caught one tuna and ate for like 3 months. That always amazed me the first time I ever saw an actual tuna. I'm like, wait a minute, how big is that thing? I always thought tunas were tiny because they fit in these little cans, I really did. I thought they were a small fish. I did not realize they were huge, huge things, but they are quite large. But yeah, that's entire. I can see Noah just dangling off the side of the boat, just throwing his line out.
Yeah, a whole lot of big things you're all about.
Yeah.
Children.
But then, like I said too, though, I think the food that they took on board was to be for them and for the animals, and I believe God made sure that there was plenty. So it's hard to say what they did. Remember, all he had was a window. I don't know that they didn't really have a deck. They couldn't really go out on the deck, so maybe he couldn't fish out the window. So what?
That's what we were just talking about. They couldn't fish because they couldn't go outside the yard.
Well, they had that window. They can, if they get that flick of the wrist just right, they could probably get it off the side. They'd have to pay in for an expensive reel at Walmart, though. They might have to go to Bass Pro to get one. Reckon they had one back then. All right. Well, everybody come back on Sunday. Lord willing, the 8th, 9th, and 10th. I think we ran over a few names. I think we're going to I want to try to call them before Sunday so we can have them verified. But I'll try to get Billy Gregg for one night, try to get Preston Patrick, and then try to get Gary Cabin. See if they'll come over and preach for us. Because they've all either preached here or been pastors here. I think Gary and Billy have both been pastors here. I was trying to get people that haven't been here in a long time. I know we can also call Gary Hodges, and I definitely want to invite everybody that has ever been here. I would really like to make this a special celebration. 70 years is a long time, and the world's changed a lot in 70 years. God's changed none. Keep that in mind. So let's be much in prayer for that. If you know of somebody that used to come here, talk to them, tell them what we're doing June 8th, 9th, and 10th. And they can come anytime, but that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Shouldn't conflict with any other churches that we know of. So hopefully that'll work out for everybody to be here with us. And I think they're planning on having dinner on Saturday, most likely. Before or after? Before. Okay. Great. We'll get our bellies full, and then whoever's preaching will have to do a lot of work that night. Yeah. We'll see. Okay. That'll work. All right. Anyway, so let's all stand. We'll be dismissed. Anybody have anything else? Alright, come back Sunday. Do we have any other announcements I'm missing? What did you say next Tuesday or next Monday? Which one? Tuesday. So don't forget that. That'll be here. And we'll try to get the yard mowed next Thursday or Friday and weed eated so it looks real good for y'all's women's event. So we'll try to do that Thursday or Friday. So anybody else have anything?
What time will it start? At 6 or 7?
On the 8th, 9th, and 10th? We'll do 7, I think. Because during the week it's hard for people to get off and get here at 6. So let's do 7 o'clock.
Somebody will say it's been the idea.
Yeah, we'll do 7 o'clock, and I'm gonna get the website up and running. I'm gonna make a goal before Sunday, so because we can announce it there, and then take some cards with you, and then maybe if we get those cards out there, and then tell them we're doing the 70th anniversary celebration, they can come go to the website and find it. I'll get that up and running by Sunday.
On the card?
Yeah, the website's on the card, isn't it? Yeah.
That's why I asked you.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right, that's all. Randall, you dismissed?
Heavenly Father, God, thank you for the spirit of the Lord being in the house once again. We thank you for that lesson that you sent to us this morning. The messenger that brought it here, God, we pray that you be with our lives. As we go our separate ways now, Lord, help keep us safe, Lord, and make it back next one time to come and worship you once again. Of course, in the name of Jesus, we ask this thing. Amen.